For years, the Philippine Air Force has faced a basic problem that has nothing to do with the lack of ambition. The Philippines is an enormous archipelago. Its territory is spread across thousands of islands, separated by long stretches of water, mountainous terrain, remote communities, and difficult transportation routes. That geography creates a simple military requirement. The country needs to be able to move people and equipment quickly. And now, the Philippine Air Force has taken another major step towards solving that problem. The final aircraft from its second major S-70i Black Hawk purchase have arrived in the country. That means the Philippine Air Force has completed the delivery of an additional 32 Black Hawk helicopters ordered under its modernization program. And this is more significant than simply adding another type of aircraft to an inventory. It gives the Philippines a much larger helicopter force built around one common platform. According to Lockheed Martin, once the deliveries were completed, the Philippines would become the world's largest operator of the S-70i variant of the Black Hawk. But why does the Philippines need so many Black Hawks? And what can a fleet of this size actually change? To understand that, we have to look beyond the helicopter itself. The real story is about mobility. The S-70i Black Hawk is fundamentally a utility helicopter. It is not designed around a single mission. Instead, it can be adapted for troop transportation, cargo movement, search and rescue, humanitarian assistance, disaster response, medical evacuation, and other missions, where the ability to move people through difficult terrain is critical. That flexibility is particularly valuable for the Philippines. Imagine a major typhoon striking an isolated province. Roads can become unusable. Bridges can be damaged. Airports may be unavailable. Entire communities can suddenly become difficult to reach. In that situation, a helicopter can become one of the fastest ways to move emergency personnel, food, medicine, rescue equipment, and other supplies. This is one reason the Black Hawk has become such an important part of Philippine military aviation. The aircraft is useful during conflict, but its value does not disappear during peacetime. In fact, some of its most visible missions in the Philippines have involved helping civilians. The same aircraft that can transport military personnel can also deliver humanitarian assistance after a disaster. That dual-purpose capability matters enormously for a country that regularly faces powerful tropical storms, earthquakes, flooding, landslides, and other natural disasters, and now the scale of the fleet is changing. The Philippine government originally acquired 16 S-70i Black Hawks. Then, in 2022, the Department of National Defense signed a contract for another 32 aircraft. That second contract was valued at roughly 32 billion Philippine pesos and included logistic support and training for pilots, and the Philippine Air Force can build experience around a single major utility helicopter platform rather than spreading limited resources across numerous unrelated designs. And that becomes increasingly important as the fleet grows. The Philippines is not only purchasing helicopters, it is developing the human and technical infrastructure required to operate them. The 32 aircraft acquisition included training and integrated logistics support, helping establish the foundation needed to sustain the fleet. This is one of the less visible parts of military modernization. A helicopter on the ground is not automatically a military capability. The capability comes from the aircraft, the crew, the maintenance organization, the logistics system, the communications network, and the operational doctrine working together. That is why fleet size alone should never be the only measure of military strength. The next question is how effectively the Philippine Air Force can use this expanded fleet. And that brings us to territorial defense. The Philippines is increasingly developing a defense strategy based on its geography. The country needs the ability to move personnel between islands, reinforce remote areas, support coastal positions, evacuate casualties, and respond to emergencies over a huge geographic area. Helicopter fleet is perfectly suited to many of these requirements. It can move without depending entirely on roads. It can reach areas where fixed-wing aircraft cannot land. And it can operate from locations where larger transport aircraft may not be practical. That makes the Black Hawk particularly valuable for rapid mobility. Consider a remote military unit located on an island far from a major base. If that unit needs additional personnel, equipment, or supplies, the Air Force needs transportation options. A helicopter can provide that link. The same principle applies during disaster response. If an earthquake cuts off a mountain community, helicopters can potentially deliver rescue teams and supplies. If flooding isolates an area, they can support evacuation. If a medical emergency occurs in a remote location, aviation can reduce the time required to reach the affected population. This is why the Black Hawk should not be viewed simply as a battlefield aircraft. For the Philippines, it is also a national mobility asset. And that distinction is important. Military modernization often focuses public attention on fighter jets, missiles, frigates, submarines, and other high-end systems. Those platforms are important. But a modern armed force also needs the ability to move. You can have sophisticated weapons, but if personnel and equipment cannot reach the location where they are needed, those weapons cannot solve every problem. Mobility connects the entire force. That is what makes the Black Hawk fleet strategically interesting. It supports the rest of the military. It can move troops. It can move equipment. It can support logistics. It can assist during disasters. And it can help the armed forces respond to events across a geographically fragmented country. Those platforms are important. But a modern armed force also needs the ability to move. You can have sophisticated weapons, but if personnel and equipment cannot reach the location where they are needed, those weapons cannot solve every problem. Mobility connects the entire force. That is what makes the Black Hawk fleet strategically interesting. It supports the rest of the military. It can move troops. It can move equipment. It can support logistics. It can assist during disasters. And it can help the armed forces respond to events across a geographically fragmented country. The completion of the additional 32 aircraft therefore represents more than another procurement headline. It is the completion of a major expansion project. The first 16 S-70i helicopters had already established the Black Hawk as an important part of Philippine aviation. The additional 32 dramatically increased that footprint. The final aircraft from the second contract arrived in August 2026, completing the delivery of all 32 aircraft ordered under that program. But this is not the end of the story. It may actually be the beginning of the more difficult phase. Now the Philippine Air Force has to turn aircraft into sustained capability. That means keeping them flying. It means developing experienced crews. It means maintaining the aircraft properly. It means ensuring parts and technical support remain available. And it means determining where these helicopters provide the greatest value. The Philippine Air Force's 205th Tactical Helicopter Wing is central to operating and maintaining the Black Hawk fleet. As the number of aircraft grows, the organization supporting them becomes just as important as the helicopters themselves. There is also a larger international dimension. The Black Hawk is operated by numerous countries, meaning the Philippines is acquiring a platform with a large international user community. That can create opportunities for training, interoperability, logistics cooperation, and operational experience. For a country strengthening defense relationships with partners, common platforms can potentially make cooperation easier. But again, the most important factor is not the badge on the helicopter. It is how the Philippine military integrates the aircraft into its overall force. A large helicopter fleet can support the Army. It can support the Air Force. It can support disaster response. It can support search and rescue. And through joint operations, it can contribute to missions involving other government agencies. That makes the Black Hawk one of the more flexible assets in the Philippine military inventory. And there is a symbolic side to this as well. For years, Philippine defense modernization was constrained by aging equipment and limited resources. The arrival of new Black Hawks demonstrates how dramatically some parts of the force are changing. But large helicopter fleet can support the Army. It can support the Air Force. It can support disaster response. It can support search and rescue. And through joint operations, it can contribute to missions involving other government agencies. That makes the Black Hawk one of the more flexible assets in the Philippine military inventory. And there is a symbolic side to this as well. For years, Philippine defense modernization was constrained by aging equipment and limited resources. The arrival of new Black Hawks demonstrates how dramatically some parts of the force are changing. The Philippines is now operating a much larger fleet of modern utility helicopters than it did only a few years ago. The challenge is making sure that this modernization remains sustainable, because purchasing 32 helicopters is one achievement. Keeping 32 helicopters operational over many years is another. That will require continuous investment. Maintenance will matter. Training will matter. Infrastructure will matter. And most importantly, operational planning will matter. If those pieces come together, the Philippines will have something more valuable than a large collection of aircraft. It will have a genuine mobility system, one capable of moving people and equipment across an archipelago where geography has always been one of the country's greatest strategic challenges. The Black Hawk will not solve every defense problem. It cannot replace fighter aircraft. It cannot replace naval vessels. It cannot replace air defense. And it cannot replace the logistical infrastructure required to sustain military operations. But it can connect those capabilities. It can move the people who operate them. It can transport equipment to where it is needed. And during a national emergency, it can become a lifeline between isolated communities and the rest of the country. That is ultimately why the completion of the 32 additional S-70i Black Hawks matters. The headline may be that the Philippines has received its final batch. The bigger story is what the country can now do with the fleet. The aircraft have arrived. The procurement phase is essentially complete. Now comes the real test. Can the Philippine Air Force turn this growing fleet into a reliable, sustainable, and highly available mobility force? If it can, the Black Hawk fleet could become one of the most important foundations of Philippine military mobility for decades to come. And with the Philippines continuing to modernize its armed forces, the completion of this acquisition may be remembered not simply as the arrival of 32 helicopters, but as the moment the country's rotary-wing capability entered an entirely new scale. The Black Hawk era in the Philippines is no longer just beginning. It is becoming a major part of the country's modern defense architecture. And now that the final aircraft have arrived, the next chapter is about putting the entire fleet to work.